Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist here in Las Vegas and Joe Mack in New York. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Jim. How's everything? And I know we're looking forward to this big football weekend. Should be a lot of fun, and we were kicking around the weather, and sounded like it may not be so bad out there in these four sites.
You know, I was kind of looking for some bad weather to make it more fun, snow and wind and all that. Make the old-fashioned type football weekend, but right now we're going to have some wind in Baltimore, and it could be 15 to 20 miles an hour according to what you read. Now, I don't see any precipitation at this point in the four sites, and they are four outdoor sites, so it is, it is wintertime, so you can't, it's going to be cold in Green Bay, but I don't see anything, and that's a heated field, so the frozen tundra is not real because it can't freeze when they got heat under the field. Last week was all four unders came in, and the underdogs did well. It's been an underdog year, actually. A lot of road teams and road team underdogs all regular season have come in. And last week was pretty much the same thing, except for that overtime field goal for Houston. None of the favorites really would have covered. So it's interesting. I don't know if there's any great teams that, like we've seen in the past, were a really dominant team. I think a lot of people thought that maybe the Saints were a dominant team, but they got clipped again, and Minnesota and Kirk Cousins did very, very well. That's a good football team. They got a lot of good things on that team. Their defense is good. Their offense is good. Their running game is good. Their wide receivers are good. They got a good coaching staff. That's not a team to sneeze at. So it's very interesting, these four games. And, of course, everybody, and me too, I had Seattle last week. And I picked my spots with Seattle, and it's been good. But, God, when the game's over, and like you said before we got on the air, after the game you scratch your head and say, how the hell did they win? Because they don't look all that great. They have the magician at quarterback, and DK Metcalf looks really good. But their running game, they've lost all three of their running backs. They had to replace all of them. And they didn't pick up, I think, like 50 or 60 yards running last week, which is really unusual.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We've talked about a couple of things with Seattle. One, they've just been an unbelievable road dynamo this year. They carried that right from the regular season into the postseason. And it's funny that they could win in Philly by the same identical score as they won in the regular season. And, we talked about Russell Wilson. I know he's been very good to you over the years, and you love him, and you always tell me he's a magician, and you're right. And it's amazing. He never misses any plays. You look at all these guys that take hits. Big, strong guys at quarterback, and they miss time. They miss a couple of games here, a couple of games there. You look at a guy like Ben Roethlisberger with the Steelers this year, hurt early in the year. A great career, Hall of Fame career, Super Bowls and everything. But he's missed an awful lot of time, when you really break it down. He never plays a full season. You look at Russell Wilson, he's at the end of his 8th season. He never even misses a snap. Forget about a game here or there. He's out there. He's the engineer of that whole offense. Like you said, the running game in tatters right now without Carson and Penny and the like. He's just an amazing player. And it's funny, now they're going into Green Bay. Like you said, it's going to be cold, everything. And this team, look at their travel. They go back home after Philly. They got this trip to Green Bay. You know what? Nothing seems to faze them. They're a dangerous team. And to be honest with you, out of the four games that we've got here in the divisional playoff round this Saturday and Sunday, you look at that game, they're basically giving Green Bay the home field and maybe half a point. They're only a 4-point favorite. I look and I say, wait a second. They were number 2 seed. They're catching a Seattle team that had to play on the road last week, all this travel, and yet Green Bay's only 4. I don't know. It raises a little, gives me a little suspicion and whatnot. But great respect for Russell Wilson. And really, Pete Carroll's done a really, really good job this year. I know he's kind of repatching that defense on the fly. He does have some big-time players there, like with Clowney and with Bobby Wagner. But still, he's done a real solid job. And out of all 4 games this weekend, to me, when you combine the cold and everything else, that's a very intriguing game, and it really is. I just want to touch on one thing on the wild card round. It's amazing. You said the underdogs hit 3 out of 4, and if you play the under, you won all 4. You go back the last 3 years in a wild card round, and underdogs have only won 2 games out of the last 12. And as far as over/under, I believe it's 1-11. If you've gone with the over, you're 1-11. The wild card round is over and done with for this year, but it's amazing how it's turned out. It's been really fit that pattern. And meanwhile, now you've got this divisional play, and as you said, you're looking at a year where the underdogs. Now, if you include regular season and the wild card round, I've got the numbers here. Favorites this year are 17 games under 500. And home teams are only 108 and 144. I mean, that's hard to believe against the spread that home NFL teams are 108 and 144 with 8 pushes. So you wonder if it carries over here, whether we're going to have a couple of road teams pull some shockers. We've got some big numbers, and it's going to be fun and games here in this round.
Well, that's great stats. I mean, interesting when you hear somebody say those numbers. Is there? I mean, if you threw these teams out there, all 8 teams, and you said, okay, just who's going to win this thing? On any given week, sometimes, I mean, look at the way Green Bay played San Francisco, and look at the way Seattle played San Francisco. I mean, and San Francisco is definitely one of the best teams this year. They've got a good coach. Their offense is solid. They do have a young quarterback that we don't know how he's going to play at this level. But their defense is solid. Their pass rush is solid. They got running backs that are blistering fast and big guys. But Seattle played San Francisco twice. They beat them once and almost beat them a second time, probably about 6 inches short of the goal line. And when Green Bay played them, the game was over in the first 2 minutes. San Francisco killed them, and now. You look at that and you say, okay, well, what Green Bay team's going to show up? So if you take that game out of the mix, which basically the odds makers are saying is pretty much a toss-up, if that was on a neutral field, the other 3 games are all over 7-point favorites. Are you telling me, when you look at the dog pattern for this year, the road dog pattern, you're 100% right asking that question. Will that continue? Because Minnesota's capable. Tennessee is capable. I mean, they just did go up to New England, although I don't think New England was as good as a lot of people had hoped they were going to be or thought they were going to be because of the names Belichick and Brady. They got a little bit more ink than they should have. Houston, boy, I tell you, Buffalo had them beat, and Buffalo just choked that thing away, and their quarterback, Josh Allen, played terrible in the second half. But I don't know, you could throw that on but then again, if Houston gets Fuller back, they become a much different team with Fuller. They're going to take the top off the and allow Watson to do his thing because he's very capable of getting out of pressure. Throwing the deep ball he's very good. And when you have those 3 wide receivers with Fuller at the top of it, they're very dangerous. I know Kansas City's defense came up strong at the end of the year, but an injury like that could make a huge difference in the outcome of that game. Now, also the weather. Although we said there's not too much weather, the weatherman is not always right, and we're still sitting here. It's Wednesday, so these games don't start until Saturday and Sunday. Weather changes, and all 4 of these cities have the capability of having bad weather. And it's going to be cold in Green Bay. Kansas City is a very cold spot also. Wind is always possible when you're playing outdoors. Baltimore is predicted to have wind. Big storms heading across the country. So we have to keep our eye on that. So getting too married to a side or a total too early in the week without knowing that weather is not a good idea.
You're right about that. I mean, you look at it this year, we've already seen a snow game in Kansas City. That's always possible. And, it's funny, ever since the Tuck Rule game back in 2001 when Brady fumbled and, the Raiders got jobbed on that, this is my opinion, the TV networks in the NFL, they've always been looking for a repeat like that. So, I mean, it's no surprise to me they made Green Bay, a 6:40 p.m. game on a Sunday night there. They're hoping for that snow globe type of game and all the nasty weather that goes with it. But you're right. We're 3-4 days out from these games. You don't know how it's going to be. And, I'm not the first person to say it, but the weather is always the great equalizer. You get a team like Tennessee, if they bring that running game into Baltimore and there's bad weather and they can shorten this game and they can, win time of possession, who's to say that the Titans can't be sitting there, with 4 or 5 minutes in the game down 17-13 with a chance to win? It could happen. And we're going to see it in these other places too. These teams are going to rely on defense and shortening the game in some respects. If you're going against the Chiefs with this Texans team, like you said, you need Will Fuller back in there. If you don't have him, Watson is really short one dynamic player, and Houston could certainly use a little bit more offense. They can't just rely on Watson escaping the pocket. But again, I know it's always not exciting to think about teams, quote, shortening the games, but that's what, to me, these 3 7-point and bigger underdogs want to do this weekend. Get some help from the weather, get a ground game that's going to be better than the other side, and hope that they're right there with 3-4 minutes to go.
Talking about a ground game, can Derrick Henry run the ball any better than he did last week? My goodness. that was an incredible. Tannehill was 8 of 15 for like 70 yards. It was all Henry in that game, and it was enough to win.
Yeah, no, he's been a beast. I think I said this before. My son is in fantasy leagues, and he had Derrick Henry, and he wound up having a pretty good finish to his year. And I've been saying all year long, the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, who's going to win the MVP, and Russell Wilson, who was the first half of the season MVP. Besides them, you could put Derrick Henry right behind him as far as MVP votes and stuff. The guy is a beast, and I'll tell you what, they really were very smart with him. The announcers pointed it out the other day. They were right. That Tennessee game late in the year, I believe it was the second or last week of the year, had no real playoff meaning for them. They had to win the game in Houston. So they sat him with some nagging hamstring problems, and he came back the next week, and supposedly he was at 75% or so, and he ran for 211 yards. And he certainly did not look like he was suffering any effects of an injury the other day. You figure with Tennessee's got a really solid offensive line. Their 2 offensive tackles are excellent players. And you get Henry on a roll like this. Now, granted, I'm not disrespecting Baltimore. They're a great team this year, best team in football. Defense may not be what the 2000 team was under Brian Billick and company, but they're still solid. I'm just looking at their numbers the last few weeks. You got to go back all the way to the 4th or 5th week of the season to see the last time they gave up more than 21 points. But the Ravens are going to really have their hands full here. If this guy gets momentum, he's like any big, strong back, Jim, as we know. He needs the ball. They can't feed it to him 4 times in the first quarter and 3 times. This guy needs the ball 25 times, and he gets like a locomotive and gets going. And, Tennessee is live here. Obviously, having to play a game where the Ravens were sitting and not having to travel, big advantage to the Ravens. They deserve to be 9-point favorites here. But Tennessee, again, I keep using the phrase, if they can shorten the game, get possession of the ball for, say, 37 minutes or something like that here, an upset is not out of the question.
I will point out that since we're talking about that game opened, the first line I saw was Baltimore 10.5, and the total was 48.5. Now, that number is down to 47 or 46.5, and Baltimore is now 10, 9.5, 9, 10, in that range. Mostly 9.5s and 9s, but there are some 10s still out there. But that sort of tells you when the total goes down like that. A, they're looking at weather, and we do know it's supposed to be windy there, so that could help affect not the running game so much, but the passing game. And if you affect the passing game, you can affect the running game too, because your defenders can move up and play the run a little bit more. But Baltimore is a very explosive team. They can score a lot of points. Asking that team to score 40 is not out of the question. But in bad weather, maybe not. And Tennessee was a big over team until the last couple of weeks. One game they didn't really have to play much, but they were like 9 out of 10 weeks they went over. There was a stretch near the end of the year, and then the total will go down from 48.5 to 46.5 in some spots. That's a tell. In poker, we use the term tell. That's a tell. They're telling us something there is wrong with the original number. So, and when you analyze that a little bit, you have to be looking at weather or style of play. And shortening the game with running the ball with Tannehill, handing off to Henry, if that works again like it did against the Patriots, that tells you, that gives more value to taking the 9.5 or 10 if you can get it, and the under. So then the sharp people are moving these numbers. It's not average Joes that move these numbers.
Right. No, that's very good points, of course. And it's fun to watch from what's going to be on the other side of the ball. You got Lamar Jackson, as you said, he's led this very explosive offense. The passing game's been dynamic. I know people seem to think, okay, they just throw to their tight ends. No, they can throw some deep balls, too. I want to see how he's going to be defended here by Tennessee. I mean, Vrabel, obviously the head coach of Tennessee, is a defensive-minded guy. You hear the term spy all the time. Do they have somebody that can stay with him and spy him? Does he maybe take one of his defensive backs and put him out there to be a spy? It's going to be interesting. I really think Jackson, he likes to dart around there, make his big plays. I think he's going to be, he's going to be getting shadowed pretty good here. I think he's going to have to make some big passing plays. So again, if you talk about the weather and the winds and whatnot, maybe he won't be able to throw a 35, 40-yard pass down the field. We don't know. That might affect it. So I'm going to be really curious to see how the Titans come out, whether they spy him right from the start or whether that's going to be a strategy that they implement during the course of the game. It's going to be a real chess match, and let's face it, Lamar Jackson's been great this year. I mean, anybody that did not vote for the MVP is nuts, and I heard that 3 guys supposedly didn't put him on the ballot or didn't put him number 1. But, he doesn't have a whole lot of playoff experience, and his experience last year was not very good against the Chargers. So
it was horrible.
We're gonna learn some things here, and it's going to be a little test here for the league MVP.
When you look at the way Tannehill played last week, now he did what he had to do, and he made a couple of plays at the end, but he was 8 of 15 for 70 yards, round numbers. That's not very good. And if you look at the way Jackson played against the Chargers last year in the playoffs, that was pretty bad too. So you have 2 quarterbacks heretofore have not played very well in the playoffs in their efforts, but they're both much more capable than that. And I have to point this out right now. I have the screen up where I got 11, almost 30 books up on my screen. We're seeing a lot of money pop up for Seattle. I'm seeing 3s and 3.5s, and then when the 3s and 3.5 show on the screen, they're immediately popping back up to 4. So there's money, heated money coming in on Seattle and against, but there are a lot of people out there grabbing the 4s, and then there's people coming right back and laying the 3.5. So a lot of activity on that game. Now, when we switch to that game a little bit, that is an interesting game because Green Bay has been super inconsistent. Seattle is 8-1 on the road this year. I mean, they didn't play worth a damn at home, but on the road they've won 8 out of 9. Now, granted, they played up against Philadelphia last week, who was all banged up, and of course they lost their quarterback. And McCown, hats off to McCown. That guy is a warrior. I've always liked him. I mean, he's not an A quality quarterback, but he always comes to play. He gives you 1,000%. And God only knows. He might have played better than Wentz would have if he continued in the game. You don't know. Nobody has an idea of that. He did move the ball up and down I have no idea how Seattle, that was amazing. Now, here they're going to Green Bay, and, history says Seattle going to Green Bay, they haven't played very well there, which is kind of interesting. And now I'm seeing an upward tick on the total. I'm seeing 47.5 show. I'm seeing 3.5 show, and then bounces right back. So there's a lot of movement on that game right now. Every other game, they're all quiet. Screen just popped. 44 Minnesota, San Francisco. That's another big underplay, and on that game. So that I don't know why that would be, because the weather looks good there, but it could be any other reason. But just stuff that's happening. It was like watching the stock market, Joe. It's really an amazing. It's really no different than watching stocks and bonds and all that.
Exactly, and then obviously it's going to get more and more volume pumped into all the books here as we get closer to the games. You know what's funny about these divisional games, Jim? I looked it up, and there's only one team that was in this divisional round last year. Isn't that? I mean, you talked about it earlier here in the broadcast. I mean, the Saints are out, the Patriots are out, the Rams, who were a Super Bowl team and a playoff team the last couple of years, they're out. You only got one team out of 8, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're the only team that was in this round last year. I know they always talk forever. You hear this forever, that every year 4 or 5 or 6 teams, fall out of the playoff, that win the playoffs one year, not in the playoffs the next year, so you get 4, 5, 6 new teams. But I don't remember. I'd have to look it up, and I apologize for not having it right now. But I got to find out, when is the last time you had a year-to-year change like this, where normally I would think if you get to this round, you look it up, the year before there's usually 4 out of 8 that were there, 5 out of 8, something like that. You got one team, that's it. None of these teams have this kind of experience in the last year. The Chiefs last year won in this round, lost obviously the AFC Championship game, a game they should have won against the Patriots. So it's not like you have novice teams. You obviously have high-level teams. You've got obviously the top 2 seeds coming in here off buys and everything. But you know what I'm saying? It has a bit of a novice feel to it. Like, you know what? These teams don't have a whole lot of Super Bowl or deep playoff run history to them. I mean, you got Russell Wilson, who's been in a couple of Super Bowls, and you've got Rodgers, who's been in a Super Bowl, and that's about it. You look at the other guys. I mean, really, I'm just trying to think with the other quarterbacks. I don't think you have anybody that's even made it to the conference championship games out of this whole group, except for who I just mentioned. So, and they're both in the same game against each other in the Seattle Green Bay. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that when you look back and then you look at last year, you're like, wow, it's the whole landscape, the whole playoff landscape is different. It's 90% different. It's in one way it's kind of cool, but in another way you're like, boy, you're missing some of the big names. But like you said before, the Patriots were probably not one of the best 8 teams in the NFL this year, so no hardship that they're out. The Saints, they have to be sick, but I don't know what to say about them anymore. But in some regards, they cost themselves before that non-call late. I mean, the way they butchered the clock at the end of the game and everything, not to be able to get a shot at the end zone or two. They have nobody to blame but themselves. But anyway, those teams can look back and say they were double-digit win teams and they got nothing to show for it. But that's just the way things have played out so far this year.
Well, it's very interesting. And what it does for, I think, all of us trying to predict these games is we don't have the pedigree for these coaches and players and quarterbacks. I mean, look at the Minnesota. Cousins hasn't been there. You got San Francisco with Garoppolo. He's never even started a playoff game. Tennessee had one. Their quarterback played one playoff game, and that was last week, and he didn't do very well. Baltimore had a quarterback that played last year, and he didn't do very well. And then you go to Houston. Watson's national championship game with Clemson and all that. Kansas City, Mahomes. Seattle and Green Bay, yeah, you can't question their quarterbacks at all. And then you look at the head coaches. What head coaches do you respect? The Green Bay head coach is brand new to this position. That is an issue, and I think we should consider that to be a potential problem, because the guy he's going up against has been there a lot. The Kansas City head coach with Reed, that's huge over O'Brien. O'Brien, we knock O'Brien all the time, but he has won 4 out of the last 5 divisions down there in the South. But Andy Reid's been he's like a monument in this league. You got Harbaugh, you got Vrabel, who's relatively new, but he's a good player, and he's obviously had a good season. But Harbaugh is, he's been around a while. He's pretty damn good. I have a lot of respect for San Francisco's head coach, but mostly as a play caller. And at this level, we do remember when he had the play calling ability, 28-3 halftime lead over New England, and then they crapped the bed. And then, of course, you got, the head coach for Minnesota. This has been a road dog year. And I don't think anybody should just sleep on these teams and say, hey, these other teams, you got 3 teams over 7-point favorites. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but we'll do that, on our sites when people go buy our picks. But keep your eye open. It's only Wednesday. Let's keep our eye open for weather, injuries, especially that injury to Fuller for Houston. If he comes back, that's a big deal, both for the side and the total. And, of course, Seattle is a banged-up team, and if they lose any more players, they might have to call me up to play, and that would be really ugly. Joe, tell me what's going on at Jim Hurley, because we're running out of time.
All right, Jim. Yeah, we're going to have these playoff games, sides and totals. We come off a pretty good weekend. I was telling you before the broadcast, we had a nice under win with the Seattle-Philly game. Obviously got a little bit of a break with Wentz, but like you said, it may have gone under anyway. But we had a decent weekend, and we're planning on having a big weekend here. Sides and totals, just give us a call. Jim Hurley Network. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-323-4453. Again, Jim Hurley Network, been around since 1985, 1-800-323-4453. Otherwise, you can go online, Jim Hurley, Hurley, JimHurley.com. Obviously, we got the college football national championship game next Monday night. Looking to come in with the winner of the Clemson-LSU game, and always basketball. We're on a nice little run here, especially in the college hoops these days. We had a nice winner with Baylor over Texas Tech on Tuesday night. So 1-800-323-4453. Lots of action. Obviously, all the football this Saturday and Sunday. National title game Monday night. All the hoops. We got it for you. Check us out, JimHurley.com.
Great. Joe, thank you very much for your time today and your insight. We'll talk again soon.
Okay. Try to get some sleep, Jim. I know you seem to be up for about 23 hours a day. I don't know how you do it, but God bless you.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. I'll try to do that. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, pal. Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. Make sure you follow along with Joe and check out that Jim Hurley site. And have a great week. We're going to have some winners. Lots of winners.